Hello, my name is Theo Angus Santica. I write books under Gede Parma, and I am here speaking with one of my dear friends who is one of my elders in the reclaiming and fairy traditions, and who I met 5 years ago teaching on a witch camp team in California.
California.
Yeah. So this is Pandora, and I'd love you to tell us all a bit about who you are and what turns you on in the infinite.
In the infinite. I like the infinite because the infinite is so infinite. I used to tell my students that humans are infinitely constructed, not just because there's so many of them and they're so different, but because each one of us is infinitely constructed. There are so many ways that we can create ourselves. Yeah, so I like the infinite, just as itself. Also parrots. My latest thing is that I have rescue parrots, and so they've changed my life. Because, they're not mammals. So it's not like being dog mom, cat mom. I'm not their mom. I'm a friend who learns to talk to them. Yeah, so. Anyway, that's the infinite. So I'm initiated in reclaiming and fairy, although I consider reclaiming fairy. They're two different aspects, a deeper aspect of the same thing. And I started in reclaiming about 1981 in San Francisco. I had grown up in Albuquerque, which is where I am now, but I went to San Francisco. I went to the Bay Area, and that's where I got all my education. All the educations I learned witchcraft, I got a doctorate, I got so clean and sober, all the foundations of education in these different realms, that's where I got them. And then I went to be a professor, and now I'm not anymore. And so I'm back in Albuquerque with my wife, who's a lawyer, who's soon going to be bringing me tea, because where I am in the reality of this particular interview is it's really early in the morning. So I had time to wash my hair, but I did not have time to make tea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, yeah, it's just after 2:30 here in Amsterdam, where I actually do not live. I I live in Melbourne in Australia, and I have been traveling for 7 weeks.
Where it's spring, yeah.
It's about to be spring, yeah.
About to be spring.
It is the tide of Bridget in the land that I make home in, and it is the tide of Lunasa or Lammas here. And I was just in the British Isles and Ireland, and for weeks I got to see, even though there is a very big drought there, I still got to see the crops come into their fullness before the first harvest. And so a friend of mine who you know too, Raven Edgewalker, she was writing the other day about watching the farmers come in and try to speedily harvest everything. And the other signs of Lammas were also around, like the berries and the blackberries on the vine and the bramble.
Oh, the blackberries.
Yeah.
The blackberries are sacred to Bridget.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So you have been a part of the reclaiming tradition and community since it kind of articulated itself, or maybe even before it articulated itself.
No, I was the second wave. I was the second wave. What had happened was that Star and a friend were doing classes, and I was the second wave of classes. So the Holy Terrors were the coven that came before us. We were the wind tags.
Great. And in that time, tea.
Yeah, tea. Oh my God! I love thank you so much. It's in my Santa Fe opera cup.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
Yeah, because the opera here, oh my God, it's like they put a roof over really where the audience sits, because they kept getting rained on. But it's in the open, and you can see in the dark this little light of cars, little thing all the way up to Galisteo. It's so lovely. Oh, then there's opera, which is nice also.
It's also nice. So
anyway, I'm sorry.
That's totally fine. You're doing advertisement for New Mexico. That's totally appropriate. I'm wondering, what was reclaiming like in the early 80s as distinct from now? Or, just something like that. Like, what was your experience coming into reclaiming this second wave of core classes, this coven that you were in?
The energy was extraordinarily powerful. It was very intense. And there was, I don't know what it's like now, because I haven't lived in San Francisco since 1992. Is that when I left? So I haven't been there in a long time. I visit people, but I don't know what it's like to live there. But it was extraordinary. We were, there were people, there were meetings, there were things going on in the house all the time. I lived with Star and Rose and Carol, and there were things were happening continually. Busy, busy, busy. And then these giant public rituals out on the beach. It was lovely. It was really lovely. And it was, you know how it is, what happens is that what you do in your 20s really becomes a kind of, that's when you put yourself together as an adult. It becomes really your foundational tone. That's what mine was reclaiming in the 80s. Yeah, because I got there like that.
Mm-hmm. And reclaiming has, to my knowledge, always identified as both anarchist and feminist. And what was reclaiming your introduction to feminism, or is that how you got there? What?
No.
Tell us about
no,
feminism
it wasn't.
and reclaiming.
Yeah, no, I'd been a feminist. I'd considered myself a feminist since I was 13. And it was because really, I was talking, I was in junior high, I was talking about, I think it was Gilbert and Sullivan's Iolanthe, and one of the other students in the class said, yes, but you're a feminist, which I thought was interesting, and I didn't know what that meant, so I had to go find out. It was like, well, yes, I am. What are we talking about? Equal damn rights? Are you kidding? Yes, so that was pretty clear. So that was already true, I had this idea, and I had never been able to figure out where this idea came from, but I believed that that you couldn't go looking for witchcraft, that it came to you. I do not know where I got that. So I was waiting because I wanted that, but I did not believe that I could make it on else. If you want to come down here, Parrot, you got to come down. And so I waited, and then there was a point where this flyer fell out of my locker that had classes on it, and I went to these classes that were in San Francisco. I was living in Berkeley at the time. And so that's how I came into them. So I didn't know anything about them. And actually I was in a room full of people who were there because they had read the Spiral Dance, which I had never heard of. So, I mean, I had no idea who Starhawk was. I just had no idea. It's just that the signs were that I was supposed to be in that living room. So I was. And I trusted them because there were several things. First of all, I heard Feri, and I didn't hear F-E-R-I. I heard Feri. I had a lot of contact with these creatures, and so that seemed reasonable. I heard that there were some Celtic roots. That made sense. Okay, fine. And then there was a point where one of the exercises we were doing in this first introductory class, we were lying down with our heads in a circle, and we had our hands on each other's bellies. We were supposed to send our energy into the ground and then bring it back up. And so I sent my energy way down at the ground, and Lauren, who was one of the teachers, was next to me, and she sat straight up and looked at me. And so I knew I was safe, because I knew what they were doing. They knew what they were doing. It wasn't just words.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really, for me, as someone who has come to reclaiming, like 8 years ago, I think I've always really enjoyed the stories of people who've been around for decades. And I guess, one of the I love talking to you anyway. And also one of the catalysts for me to ask more questions is a current, well, it's not really current. I think it happens all the time. But at the moment, as you know, there is some tension, actual conflict between different groups of women of different histories. To name it blatantly, there is perceived conflict, at least, between trans women and cis women as categories, but I don't know how true that is. So I'm wondering about your opinions or realities around your cosmology, your inclusivity towards trans women as women? And how does that intersect with your witchcraft and your feminism? I know that's a big question. But
Those are humongous. Oh my God.
I know, but I want to ask you.
It's like, please tell me all things in the world.
Yes. Your name is Pandora.
Yeah, well, there's that. So it is. So it's the giver of all things. Yeah. Okay. I'll go back into kind of like how I came into reclaiming.
Yes.
One of the other things that I was comfortable about was that it was an inclusive tradition. It wasn't, because I knew about the Dianic tradition, but that would not have been appropriate for me, because it just simply wouldn't have been appropriate. So I wanted to, in reclaiming, I worked closely in my coven with women, but the larger rituals were men and women. And that was, for me, what made sense. But it also was not binary. So we didn't have to like a male, female, male, female. It was like, just like I don't know. I mean, even the plants don't do this. What the hell? Anyway, so we didn't have to do that, which also made sense. And also, there was no high priestess, because I did not want to work under a high priestess, and I did not want to be one. So all of those, it was just right. I mean, the beings had sent me to exactly the right place. So back to the issue about the Dianic tradition and women. I had in Albuquerque in the 70s, when I was coming out and living in Albuquerque, and not a witch, but reading about things, like hanging out at there's a bar here called Crickets. And the way they kept it so that only women came in was that, so it was a lesbian bar, and it was like a club. So since they were a private club that you could I think you gave them $1 and then they wrote your name down on a little piece of paper, and so then you were allowed to come in. So there was nobody there but, Albuquerque lesbians. And at that time, the issue of how it is that one creates lesbian reality, it was very confusing for me, really. And I couldn't be a lesbian separatist. And really, honestly, the line was that I couldn't be anywhere that my little brother Jim couldn't go. That was my line. I mean, that was the energy of it. So there was that. But I have found out since that one of the things that was going on in Albuquerque at that time, and I did not know this, was that there had been an Albuquerque lesbian community for some time, and a different lesbian community had kind of, it feels like from here, this point, it feels like coming, but then created, and that was the university lesbians, which, to my amusement, we called the Boston lesbians. I think this is funny because my wife, who just brought me some tea, is from Boston. Anyway, so we called them the Boston lesbians. But I did not understand how deep that split was, because the university lesbians essentially disrupted the early community, which had been stable and underground and fairly butch femme. And they came in, it was a whole nother thing. So I grew up into my lesbianism in a place where things were making really no sense, and I didn't know why. And that's what was going on, because I am soy una gringa porteña. I'm from Albuquerque, but I was at the university. So I was kind of like in both those. I had connections in both those realms, but no real communication about what was going on. What was I answering? Oh, we were talking about trans. So my experience all along has been that the border walkers in Merkstapa, I gave you that word. It means outlaw in Anglo-Saxon. It means outlaw, Merkstapa, but it's actually literally the border walkers. The border walkers are never really as as free as it appears they might be. There are always constructions that they need to walk in order to be living with the other border walkers. I never got it right. I just never got it right, because I tried. I really tried. I had flannel shirts. It was awesome, but it didn't work. It just so didn't work, and anyway. I'm comfortable now, but I wasn't for decades, really. Is it dog walking time? We have the dog, the Cardigan Corgi Griffin. She has fear aggression, and she has to go on a special walk by herself. And also she's on Prozac, but she goes on a special walk by herself, and she's so adorable that everybody wants to pet her, which is not a good idea. Anyway, so Griffin's going off on her. Yeah, so, and then there's this business about my understanding that, my understanding of how infinitely the humans are constructed, and that in how it is that we deal with the infinite, there's our infinite doors into the infinite. And the parents are like, back, Laura, come back. And that's probably foundationally where my need for any kind of spiritual community that I'm in, my need for it to work toward inclusivity as much as possible. Though I was talking, after you said you wanted to talk to me, I was talking to Laura about this, and she said, it's not just that you think that humans are infinitely constructed, you're really committed to meeting them where they are. I was like, well, yeah, because that's where they're at. So anyway, she says that that's true. But this seems obvious to me. I don't actually understand why it's not obvious. That we're infinitely constructed, and we are different people at different times.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. And that's who we are.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody says to me that they were born into a male body, or a constructedly, a three-dimensionally male body, but that they did not fit that, sounds reasonable to me as a human experience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Where do you feel the tension lies then, like with your scholarly eyes, or your witch eyes, or your whatever eyes? Like, what would you say? What are your opinions or perspectives on where the tensions of this conflict actually lie?
Oh, it's all fear.
Mm-hmm.
It's always, well, I say that quickly. I say that quickly, that humans get afraid of things that they don't understand, or that they don't want to understand. Humans get very afraid. But the other thing is that in this particular reality, in these bodies, the human bodies, we are mammals. And that particular construction has a certain kind of territorial genetic makeup. So it's not just that the humans tend to be afraid of what they don't know. It's also that the humans are genetically engineered to hold the boundaries and to make sure that everybody's, behaving, doing the same thing, that the tribe is recognizable. I get that, but I mean, there's lots of things we could be doing as humans that really we ought not. It's like one uses one's ability to think and to change in order to not misbehave all the damn time, really, is, I think, the goal here. Does that make sense?
It makes sense to me. I mean, also, I feel like as a non-woman, someone who doesn't have that experience at all, I try to be both clear about my perspective and solidarity with marginalized people as much as possible, as a visible or semi-visible person in community, because I feel the responsibility to enact and let people know I am in solidarity with you. And so what I'm finding interesting is that at times, I'm beginning to become aware that that holding solidarity with women of all stories and backgrounds, holding solidarity with trans people and non-binary people and queer people, can actually, holding all that solidarity can actually put you right in the firing line.
Yes.
For people who are in conflict within themselves, within societal bullshit, but also within, and that societal bullshit actually oppresses and marginalizes, people who are assigned female at birth because of their outward appearing genitals, etc. But we know, you and I know how nuanced and complex this is. So what, like, if you were sitting in a room within your community, within a room full of reclaiming witches, and this conversation was going on, and I've been in those rooms when that has been happening, or in those forests, or in those buildings, or in those fields, like what would your medicine be, or what would your provocation be?
I love that. What a question. Hold on. It would depend, I think, upon what the occasion was that had caused this conversation. Because a conversation about, shall we have a women-only ritual, and who gets to go into this ritual, is different from a conversation about, you have hurt me deeply and we need to discuss this. Do you see what I mean? So it really kind of depends on what is happening and how it got there. But I see from what I'm doing now that my medicine involves letting go and listening, and then waiting. And if I am in those circumstances and I say something, it is because that information, that whatever it is I have to say has come through and needs to be said. So I wait.
Yeah.
But I hold the boundaries. I don't go to rituals which are for women, where women aren't allowed. That doesn't make any sense to me. That doesn't make any damn sense. And plus it's mean and tacky. It is tacky. So I'm not going to do that. Yeah. And I will say what it is I'm doing, which is not going to the tacky ritual, the tacky mean girl ritual. Anyway, yeah. But, and I was there, I was there when this construct was the first put together, that women need not only safe space, but a place within which they can work into their reality without the energy of the men. Like, even those, like, women and men, it's so damn binary. But anyway, so okay, fine. So I get that. I get the history of it. Even at the beginning, I wasn't comfortable with it. And now it's like, we know better. We know so much better. And so if I want a place with just women, it's like that. Like, a coven is a good place to do that.
Sure.
A public ritual, not so much, unless I am really clear that I'm being when I say women, I mean women. I don't mean women that I decided that you're women, or women that you had to be women at birth, because none of it makes any sense. Only people who've menstruated. I'm like, it just makes no sense. You know this. It just makes no sense.
Sure.
And then what? And then in that case, what about all the humans? There's humans who are constructed. There's like, it's not just about. It's like, well, our cis or trans. It's like. Humans don't just have binary bodies. They're infinitely constructed. Everybody needs to behave.
Yes. And I hold that absolute fierce, like, everyone needs to behave, including myself.
Including me.
Yeah. And this other hand.
I'm watching my language, by the way.
Absolutely.
I have not said as many bad words as come into my head.
Absolutely. I have so many words for this, but yeah, I'm being very decisive. So what I also am hearing inside this conflict is that there are many, or maybe not many, although that's the message being put forth, but probably what is truer to say is that there are small pockets of arse hats in every contingent right now, making it really difficult for the majority to actually be in solidarity with each other, because this is the story that's being shown. Because, for instance, apparently there are some trans people, and maybe even cis people or non-binary people, saying, oh, you should not be able to talk about menstruation, your wombs, or female genitalia, or any genitalia, because that's exclusive. And then you have on the other side of that, other people, maybe cis people, maybe even some non-binary people, maybe some trans people, saying, actually, we need to, you cannot talk about you cannot talk about being of a different kind of womanhood than that which is assigned by like patriarchy or medical practice at birth. Like it just sounds like loud noise. And I'm even getting to the point where I'm wondering who is effectively strategically pitting us against each other. Who is infiltrating this? And also, and I don't just mean that in terms of like, oh, are there men's rights activists creating little bot Facebook profiles, which maybe there are, but I also
Russian activists.
I wonder at the colonization of this, like this idea of like dichotomous conflict, and some of it is, you know, we're mammals, some of it is deeply genetically a part of who we are, and yet also we have this deep potentiality to get along and to be comrades.
Yes, and to learn.
Yeah, so that's not really a question, more so than that is what I'm noticing to be part of the conflict. Like some of my friends who have wombs or bleed feeling angry that apparently there are all these trans women, which I have seen no evidence for all these trans women, telling them they can't talk about their vulvas or their blood. And if that was actually happening on a huge scale, I'm like, that would make me angry or make you angry. I totally see that. But that doesn't seem to be actually happening on a large scale. And one cannot point to a small contingent of people and then make them the pivot of the entire group. Because
one does. The humans do that continually.
But that's called sexism, racism.
Yes, that's exactly.
You know,
it may well be that there's either some conspiracy or a bunch of like really active trolls. I don't know. I mean, because again, since the humans are infinitely constructed, when they're thinking up, ways to be obnoxious, they think that it may be. But I think frankly, from what I've known of the humans, that it's much more likely that what we have are some obnoxious people, a few of them being obnoxious.
Yeah.
And that happens for different reasons.
Absolutely.
That happens for a lot of different reasons. So sometimes people are needing something that they aren't getting. Sometimes people are actually not well. Sometimes people are really feeling not heard. Sometimes people are terrified of being and projecting it out. There's a lot of reasons that this might happen. But yeah, so I've been surprised by those. Like, as I got onto Facebook, I don't know, I was busy because I was taking an art history class. Because, why not? So I was very busy because it was intense. I was a sophomore. I made mistakes. It was great. I'm getting an A. But, I wasn't a perfect. Anyway, I was busy and I got on Facebook and there's this like thing going on. I'm like, what the hell is going on here? And it took me a while to kind of track down what's going on. And really, the thing is, none of us are going to get through this. None of us are going to get through this clean. We are going to say stupid things. We are occasionally going to say mean things. We are not always going to express ourselves as well as we would like. And sometimes actually what we want to express is just damn wrong. And it might take us a while to figure that out. But living in community, it's just, it's raucous.
Absolutely.
It's just very, very busy.
Yeah, I mean, it smells also like a lot of what, a lot of the Western world, the woke world is going through in terms of race. Oh, in the past few years or the past 10 years, suddenly...
we found out there was racism. Oh, my God.
Suddenly white people are like...
We did not know.
Yeah,
yes,
exactly.
we did. We did.
Yeah. And it's become in vogue to, call people out on that, call people in, however that goes. And, people of color, mixed race people, indigenous people, and I fit into some of those categories, are like, wow, are you serious? Like, and I feel angry, I feel calm, I feel loving, I feel in solidarity, I feel like I need to be a challenger. Sometimes I feel like I need my white comrades in arms to be, to do the labor for me, to explain racism or institutional racism, or the, how one, like what white privilege is. And so this conversation and community is so both delicate and also callous. Like, we are human beings, we're all these things, we're infinite ways. And so I guess when it all gets a bit too much and the noise is loud, what do you do, like, in yourself? What do you do?
I leave Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
I go do something else.
Mm-hmm.
I do, and I go back into the conversation when I feel like I've got more patience for it.
Yeah.
Or I know what it is I need to say. It's actually a kind of manifested version of what I do when I'm like in a room. When you ask me, what do I do if I'm in a room and this is going on?
Yeah.
I go in, I go down, I listen.
Mm.
And so sometimes that's what I need to do. I need to go on out. But what I do not do is respond immediately on the Facebook threads. I do not do that. I wait. Because my first response is never, ever, ever going to be one that I want to stand by later. Ever.
Yeah.
It's not a kind of being human thing. And so I think a lot of what's happening is that people say stuff, but it's also true. It's like, if I don't get to tell people who grew up, who are manifesting different kinds of reality than mine, I do not get to tell them what that reality is, because I'm not in it. That's just like it. And then when it comes, when added in that I'm cis and I'm of Northern European white heritage, that is more reason for me to step back and listen rather than explaining things. It's like everybody being mansplainers, we just don't need that reality.
Yeah.
So whenever I find myself, okay, I lie. I don't actually find myself doing this. But if I would ever want to explain to somebody else what their reality was, I would want to be really, I'd like go, okay, hey, why do I think I know what that person's reality? Where the hell did that come from?
Yeah.
So okay, here's the deal. This is a thing. It is a true thing. And we need to walk it on through. How it is that, so even just talking just about the reclaiming tradition in Ireland, how it is that we deal with the differently gendered and the differently constructed bodies, that is foundational to this tradition. Because we are birthed from the star goddess and the peacock. We must not foundationally, we must not get in the way of other people's energy when they are constructing that, unless they are doing harm, unless they are going over boundaries of other people. Which they aren't if they're sitting in the room while I'm talking about menstruation. They're just sitting there. You know what? I don't actually ever talk about menstruation, but I'm moving on. Like, why is this a thing? Okay, no, see, there's me. That's not a reality. Need to talk about menstruation. Okay, all right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have to have space.
Yeah.
I'm going to have it.
So you were kind of like you kind of started answering my question, of course, before I actually asked verbally. What do you feel is the contribution or the uniqueness of like the reclaiming fairy tradition? Because I know that you experience it that way, and as do I. So what do you think is its unique? I know that will be myriad too, but I'm asking you, Pandora, what is it that you love about reclaiming fairy or reclaiming? What is it that keeps you coming back or keeps you in conversation
despite
with
all this stuff? I've been in the,
exactly.
Although I did leave San Francisco, so there's that. I'll tell you what it is. One of the things that I remember most is that whole stint, the Oracle at Delphi thing, where you came back over and over and over. And I think really the core of it, she said many things. She say stuff, like I still do when the voices come through. The core of it all, as far as I'm concerned, is know thyself. And that's what is crucial to the fairy tradition, because the fairy tradition is an ecstatic tradition, meaning that we work with the energy as the energy is. But no one, because we are human and we are in the three-dimensional bodies, and that's what we're doing right now. I meet people where they are. No one can bring that energy through clear and unchanged. We can't, because we bring it in through this three-dimensional structure. It gets shifted by our belief systems. And unless we know what our belief systems are, and unless we know who we are, we cannot we cannot work with the energy as cleanly as we can, because we can't see how we might distort it. So the core of Feri, as far as I'm concerned, is know thyself. And what happens with reclaiming is that gets moved on out into the political realm. Like it's not just know thyself in working with the energies, which is much, much easier than working with the humans. It's know thyself when working with the humans.
Yep.
So I need to know, even if I can't articulate it, I need to know where my biases are.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I need, and God help me. Of course I've got biases. Of course I do. I can't not. I cannot be without them, because I am walking in the human body. But I can catch them. I can catch them, and
Absolutely.
And I can learn. I'm like, oh, I see. And this is one of the things going on, is that if someone says to me, you have a prejudice about this, you have a bias, and this is affecting me, and they are right, it means that I need to change something in myself. It also means, in some way, that I have been bad. And people don't like that. We do not like being bad. And so therefore, what we tend to do as humans, instead of saying, damn, what the hell, and changing ourselves, we go, go over in that other room, you person who has disagreed with me. And don't tell me that you are oppressed, because I'm more oppressed than you. Irish famine. I'm just saying. Anyway.
Thank you for theatrically displaying the human condition.
Because we don't want to be, and especially if we're politically woke, we do not want to be bad. We want to be good people. And so if we find out we're being really quite naughty, this makes us sad, and that's hard to hit.
Yeah. One of my
so shaming is not a good tactic, because the humans do not react well to shaming.
Absolutely.
So
yeah,
it's hard. It's really hard. I mean, it's just hard. The whole thing.
It is. Hard. It's really hard.
Hence my attraction to the idea, not of hermitage, because that's like, but the anchoresses. I miss that. That was kind of nice. You got to be in the community and be able to channel to God. She didn't actually have to deal with people all the time, because she would just shut the window. Thinking, having meditation. Marjorie Kemp comes by, and that's always sad, or whatever.
Thank you, Pandora. I also want to add, I completely that I align with what you just said. And I guess one of my, maybe a slightly different way, or maybe from a different vantage point, because I hear people say this a lot, when we mediate the other than human, it is not clear, or we distort it, or we have biases. Yes. And what I also like to say to people, and maybe it's because of my upbringing that I'm able to access this, or maybe it's because I didn't grow up in a Protestant culture or family, but is that we are also beautiful and delightful, and we each have different skill sets and strengths in manifesting the other than human, and in translating the other than human. So of course there is a translation, but And of course, people can distort it. We have all the evidence of that. And I can distort it, and you can distort it, and we have biases. But what I love about reclaiming and fairy as traditions of practice and methodologies of magic and mysticism is that they give us tools that I found really effective and that I continue to practice, that help us to identify the complexes and to help to begin the work of what we would call decolonization, or like the demon work, that transmuting our demons into our nourishing lovers, and how to dance with our shadows where we are at, not to dispel our shadows, but to, you know, deepen in, drink our primal darkness and become the light that comes out of darkness. If we're going to think about the star goddess and the peacock angel, you know, that's the prime cosmology, I think, that you and I are drawing from in this moment. But I feel like what I love about listening to you, or teaching on a witch camp with you, or conversing with you and people like you, and is that I get to see this amazing, unique manifestation of mystery that no one else will ever intersect, you know. And this mysterious manifestation of mystery gets to intersect with you.
Yes.
And how terrible and beautiful is that? And of course, we have constructed all these constructions, and then we have to fucking jam all of that terrible delight through all those layers and the societal complexes. We're in a pickle.
I totally accept that, and I agree. That it is not just that we distort things. When I think of know thyself, it's not so that I can become somebody who is not me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It is so that I can become more myself.
Yeah.
With less of the distortion.
Mm-hmm. Do you think?
Yeah. And then all of those infinite all of our infinite constructions. That's the dance. That's the dance.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and I would think also that part of what when I'm thinking about how it is we bring information in, I'm a medievalist. I know the medieval mystics, and when I'm working with Julian of Norwich, my strong understanding here is that she and I are actually accessing the same energy, but when she brings it through, it has Christian. It's Christian imagery. When I bring it through, it's peacock, because of the different belief systems, and those things are highly sacred. The thing about Christianity is that it got a little out of hand, and there's this history thing, and crusades, and there's the whole kind of. I was just doing some art over in Old Town yesterday, and this young man came. He had a folding chair, he stood on a folding chair, which is really very faithful, I think. And he was haranguing us because we didn't know God. And I was thinking, he has actually no idea whether these people around him know God or not. What he knows is that they're not standing on folding chairs screaming at everybody, which is apparently the method of dealing with the energy as he knows it, But, that's so sometimes it gets out of hand. Although it takes up a lot of space, really. Marjorie kept it. Yeah, but it's all. There's infinite doors into infinity.
Yeah, look, whatever.
That's what my parent says. That's one of his favorite things to say. Whatever.
Yeah, sometimes I just throw my hands up and I go, whatever. One of my favorite things to encourage people to do is, in doing the work of knowing thyself or knowing oneself, also, like, whilst doing that work, also do what turns you on. Ensuring that in what turns you on is one of those things that enables other people to do what turns them on. So not to, as you were saying before, not to cross the boundary of inherent inviolability where each and every one of us is innately sovereign, therefore we belong wholly and completely unto the ground of our own being, but having that experience where each of us is kind of, you know, predisposed to certain tracks or certain ways of being awoken to consciousness,
Yes.
or deepening into mystery.
Yeah.
And in knowing, and in the work of knowing oneself, knowing thyself, we work that out, right? And we practice and we experiment and we encounter all the different parts of who we are.
Yeah. Which it's a lovely little job in itself, because we're infinitely constructed.
Yeah.
I often think, what would my life be like? Who would I be if I did not have the constrictions that I believe I have? Like if I, you know, what, like my being damaged, for instance, from my upbringing. What would my life be like if I did not carry that as my conscience? You know, is it, in knowing myself, I know that part of what goes on for me is the having been raised as I was. But if I'm infinitely constructed, then what is behind that? There's this thing, you know, in AA we say return to sanity, meaning that the foundation was sane. How do you go back there? And what does that look like? So I need to know. I need to know. I don't think so. You hush. I need to know the ways in which my damagedness manifests itself, because that has to do with how I work in the world. And I also need to know that it's possible to go beyond that, although I may not in this lifetime. Hold on. Would you like to have some time out upstairs? I mean, at the moment, it's a corgi. It might not work for me.
Oh. So is there, like, so we've talked about, you know, humans. Basically, we're just talking about ourselves.
Yeah, because that's who we are.
Yeah, humans, ourselves, touching on mysteries that we encounter. Like, you know, my instinct, my feeling to contact you and ask you to talk with me is also so that others who might not, you know there is a Pandora, maybe they're not involved in reclaiming or Feri, or maybe they're so new that they just don't know that you're around. You know, reclaiming is this huge movement in and of itself, as much as it is a witchcraft tradition. It is also a movement. Yeah. And what would you say, like, I guess my question earlier on was not so much about San Francisco, but what do you think are the strengths of reclaiming now as a spiritual tradition and as a movement? What would you say are its strengths, and maybe also its growing edges?
It's as reclaiming expanded around the world, you know, there wasn't this kind of like core that, you know, we had invented in San Francisco. It changes wherever it is. And so naturally, the different communities are going to have different flavors and different ways of doing things. And some are going to feel familiar to me and some are not. Yeah, and I think that the loose organization and the commitment to working with the energy, those are really powerful things, because it means that the Pittsburgh community, which I was in for a while, the Pittsburgh community can put itself together differently than other communities do, have different concerns, while at the same time tapping into the energies of what everybody else is sort of doing. And I think it's a very good thing. I used to think, when I was in San Francisco, I used to think, you know, this is not the rest of the world. This is not the rest of the world. Things are going to be very, very different out. And they were, it turns out, they were very different out in other places. I think that it's good if the energy can be spread around further. I like that. And I'm also really aware, I'm really conscious of this. You know, in AA, we have this concept of the bleeding deacon. Those are the people that sit at the sides, the elders that sit at the sides and bitch about how the young people aren't doing it the way they did. And you don't want to be that. Because again, tacky, mean, and also useless. I mean, you let go of stuff. You know, I am not the future of reclaiming. I'm what reclaiming, you know, I'm in my little place. It's a whole different thing altogether. Reclaiming will be what it is, and the people who come after me, they build it. I'm in this place where I've let go more and more. I'm not regularly teaching online classes anymore. I doubt sincerely I'll ever get to another witch camp, though I might do weekend things in Albuquerque. I've got some friends I'm talking with about that. In other words, I've scaled back, and at the same time, you know, people are flying out, the initiations, or I talk to you, I've talked to people on the Zoom, I have connections, but more and more I'm trying to figure out how it is that I act as a resource when needed, because that seems right. I don't want to run things. I'm not the person running things. I'm the person, and my experiences that are not you should do what I did because, damn it. Irish famine, did I mention that? Okay, you know. You know, it's like, God, let it go. We just let it go. So it's been interesting. That's where I'm at. I'm around if people want to talk to me, ask me to write things, I'll write some stuff out there. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I'm not running things.
I think that's really admirable. I think that, this is the thing that makes you a really dynamic and grounded elder in my mind. You know, like, I know that this is the thing, right? It's usually the newer people or the younger people who will name the elders. You know, it's not you or Rose May Dance or Starhawk going, we're elders. I am
an elder.
Oh, great.
I'm old and I was there at the beginning. Hello! No, but you're right. Yeah.
No, that was awesome. I loved that. Because the other thing is that you're super real, you know, like the reality is that is true. And so one of the powerful things about you to me as an elder is that you offer yourself as a resource. And for me, it's actually really precious to be connected to the momentum of the past. Maybe that's the way I'm constructed. Like, I just actually value that a whole lot. And it's especially in a tradition of witchcraft that, you know, articulated itself in the late 70s, early 80s, but does come from Feri, is a branch of Feri, some people call it a sub-tradition of Feri, an offshoot of Feri.
Yeah. That's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, I know, that is a whole other world. But you, to me, have, ever since I first met you in Black Cat, in that attic, I was like, oh, here is a person, here is a being, here is a witch that I can just get along with. Because
that's what I thought about you. I was like, all right.
Oh,
someone that makes sense to me.
Yes, yeah. You're very sensible, which is I enjoy in people.
Like the Tarian, I have Pandora's Tarian rule of getting along in the other world. You remember this? That common sense and good manners will get you just as far between the worlds and all the worlds as it does in this one.
Yeah,
no tacky.
That's good.
I mean, I've been trying to, I was someone who was at the core of things, and then I was someone who was still working but out in Pittsburgh and not connected, and now I'm retired, living in Albuquerque, trying to figure out how it is that I serve my community, and I've had to change how it is I think that I do things, because I thought of do I serve my community by putting together big rituals and standing in the center of them? The answer is no, actually. I apparently don't do that anymore. But if needed, I will, but we don't need me to do that. We need me to be doing something else. And so now that I come to think of it, I am much more like the anchorist than I had thought, because I'm in Albuquerque. It takes a while to get here, actually. from wherever you are. It takes a while to get to, many people get here, but it takes a while. Yeah, so it's like that. I'm a resource. I had not realized that until I said that. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense to me. And so if people go to see the resource, why did they do that? It's because they've heard of her.
Yeah. Okay, well, praise our mighty dead, our beloved
It
dead.
was so nice to talk to you. Thank you.
Yeah.
I miss you.
I miss you too. Well, I don't know, maybe you'll be at, I don't know if you feel towards it, but there's this dandelion thing in September next year.
Where is it? Do you know?
It's in Santa Cruz.
That's not bad. Santa Cruz is great.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you so much, Pandora, and I think a lot of people will be provoked or enjoy this.
God knows what I said. But anything I said that hurt anyone, I'm deeply sorry.
Yes.
If I offended anyone, I don't know that that's as important.
Thank you
But
for that
hurting,
distinction.
that's not good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mwah.
Love you, baby.
Love you.